Good morning. I have another book for Hispanic Heritage Month, and this book is called The Dog Who Loved Tortillas. That should be interesting. Okay, let's see what this is about. This- Oh boy. Okay, this is how it starts. One Saturday morning, little Diego's big sister Gabriella looked out her window and saw a man singing to himself as he walked his dog. People who had dogs were always happy. They smiled more than regular people. She wondered what it would be like to have her own dog. A girl dog that was what she wanted. A girl puppy that would be all hers. Just about the same time Gabriella was thinking about a girl dog, little Diego was playing catch at Memorial Park with his friend Manny. As they were throwing the baseball back and forth, Diego noticed that a dog was sitting there watching them. "Do you think he bites?" little Diego asked. "I don't know," Manny said. "Some dogs are mean." Manny stuck his hands out like they were claws. "Grrr," he said. "Grrr," little Diego said. He looked at the dog, so calm and peaceful. He didn't look mean, not at all. They are playing ball. Just then, a woman walked up to the dog and put a leash on him. "He got away from me. I hope he didn't scare you." "No," little Diego said. "What's his name?" "Pinto," the lady said. "He's very gentle." "Can we pet him?" little Diego said. "Sure," the woman said. Little Diego petted the dog, then reached over and hugged him. The dog licked little Diego right in the face and made him laugh. He wished Pinto was his, but he knew the lady would never give him away. When you loved a dog, you didn't give him away, because a dog wasn't like a toy or a glove or a baseball bat. And then all of a sudden an idea came into his head. "I have to go," little Diego said. "I have to go home now." I wonder what he was thinking. Little Diego ran into the kitchen where his mother and father were drinking coffee and eating marinitos. "I want a dog," Diego yelled. Gabriella heard him shouting all the way from her room. She ran into the kitchen and yelled, "No fair, I want a dog too." "You're a girl. Girls shouldn't have dogs." "Dad," Gabriella said, "I want a dog." Diego gets everything he wants. Remember the time he wanted a Superman suit? He threw it in the trash. "It was supposed to make me fly," Diego whispered. "And anyway, I took it out of the trash." Diego hated to be reminded of that Superman suit. "Dad, I want a dog." "No, Dad, it's me who should get a dog," Gabriella said. Mr. Dominguez looked at Mrs. Dominguez. Sometimes Diego thought that his mother and father said things to each other without using words. Mothers and fathers were like that. "I have an idea," Mrs. Dominguez said. "You can have a dog, but you have to share it." I want it just for me," Gabriella said. "No, just for me," Diego said. "Okay," Mr. Dominguez said, "then we just won't get a dog." Diego and Gabriella looked at each other. Sometimes they said things to each other without talking too. "Okay, we'll share. But it will be more mine," Diego thought. "But it will be more mine," Gabriella thought. Diego smiled at his sister and she smiled back at him. "We'll share," they both said. "We promise." But they both were crossing their fingers behind their backs. There were lots and lots of dogs and cats at the Humane Society. Diego and Gabriella walked past all the cages. They looked sad, and Diego and Gabriella thought they were all saying, Pick me, pick me. I feel sorry for them, Gabriella said. Me too, Diego said. Maybe Mom and Dad will let us take two. Mrs. Dominguez shook her head. Just one, she said. Where are the puppies? Gabriella asked. Over there, Diego yelled. Look. Oh, look at that one, Gabriella said, pointing to a white puppy with brown spots around its black eyes. What a beautiful puppy, Gabriella said. She found one she liked. A man who worked at the Humane Society opened the cage and took out the puppy and handed it to Gabriella. Let me hold it, little Diego shouted. Gabriella wanted to let him, but she noticed the look on her mother's face. Or didn't want to let him, but she noticed the look on her mother's face. Okay, she said. The puppy licked little Diego's face and he laughed and laughed. I think I love this puppy, Diego said. I chose him, Gabriella said. He looked at his father. Is it a boy or a girl? Mr. Diego took the puppy and held it up. It's a girl, he said. A girl, Gabriella said. Yay, it's a girl dog. A girl dog, Diego said. His face fell. But he knew in his heart that the puppy Gabriella had picked had been waiting just for them. Oh, cute. As Diego and Gabriella sat with their new puppy in the back of the car, everyone tried to think of a good name for her. What about Espy? Mrs. Dominguez said. It's short for Esperanza. No. What about Choppy? Mr. Dominguez said. Choppy? Mrs. Dominguez shook her head. What about Hannah? Gabriella asked. No, Mr. Dominguez said, not Hannah. What about Sophie? Little Diego yelled. Yeah, Gabriella said, that's perfect. And so it was Gabriella who chose the perfect puppy, and it was little Diego who chose the perfect name for the perfect puppy, Sophie. That was a compromise, right? A good one. The first thing Diego and Gabriella did when they got home was to give Sophie a good bath. By the time they finished, Diego and Gabriella were soaking wet. After they dried Sophie with a towel, she walked into the living room and went to sleep on an old pillow. Tonight, she gets to sleep with me, Gabriella said. No, little Diego said, with me. She gets to sleep with no one, Mr. Diego said. We're going to let her sleep in a box with newspapers. That's mean, said Diego. No, Mr. Dominguez said, it's not mean. That's how we house train her, so she'll learn not to use the bathroom in the house. How do you know about these things? Diego asked. I used to have a dog, didn't I tell you? I'll show you this picture here. Training the dog was more work than either Diego or Gabriella thought it would be. Sophie was smart, but like all puppies, she wanted to do things her way. Every time she squatted down or started sniffing the floor, little Diego or Gabriella whisked Sophie outside so she'd understand that she wasn't allowed to use the bathroom in the house. Every night when they put her to bed, Gabriella and Diego would pet Sophie until she went to sleep. Diego would check on her in the middle of the night, and so would Gabriella. I love Sophie, little Diego said. I loved her first, Gabriella scolded. My dog, Gabriella thought. My dog, Diego thought. They fought over Sophie, but never in front of their mom and dad. And there's Gabriella. And there's Diego. They both love her very much. On Saturday morning, Diego and Gabriella decided to teach Sophie a trick. Mr. Dominguez was drinking coffee and reading the paper. Mrs. Dominguez was making fresh tortillas on the camo. Little Diego was trying to make Sophie sit. He would hold out a dog biscuit and say, "Sit." Then Gabriella would try to force her to sit, but Sophie wasn't interested in sitting. "She just doesn't listen," Gabriella said. "She's like you," little Diego said. "Don't be mean to your sister," Mrs. Dominguez said, as she added a hot tortilla to the stack on the table. Diego's mouth watered as he reached for the tortilla. "Oh, Mama," he said, "these are great." As little Diego took another bite of his tortilla, he noticed that Sophie had moved close to him. She nuzzled his legs with her snout, then barked. Little Diego looked down at her. "What, Sophie?" Sophie barked again and wagged her tail. "I think she wants a piece of your tortilla," Mr. Dominguez said. Suddenly an idea popped into little Diego's head. He tore off a piece of his tortilla and said, "Sit, Sophie, sit." Sophie wagged her tail, looked at the piece of tortilla in little Diego's hand, and sat. "Good dog," everyone in Domingo's family yelled. "Good dog." Then Diego fed Sophie a piece of tortilla. She ate it right up and stared back at little Diego. After that day, Diego and Gabriella trained Sophie how to stay, how to fetch, how to roll over, how to shake hands, and how to speak, and all with pieces of their mom's tortillas. Sophie would do anything for a piece of tortilla. "Magic tortillas," Mr. Domingo told Diego and Gabriella. "Your mother makes magic tortillas." Everyone in the neighborhood found out about Sophie's love for tortillas. When Diego and Gabriella walked the dog, everyone would say, "Here comes Sophie, the dog who loves tortillas." And they would pet her as she walked by. Mr. Jimenez, who was an artist, made Sophie a dog tag in the shape of a tortilla. So Sophie became famous, and all the children of the neighborhood loved her because she was sweet and gentle and smart. But no one loved her as much as Diego and Gabriella. It's so cute. She is sound asleep. One morning, Sophie didn't get up from her bed. Diego tried to wake her up, but nothing he tried seemed to work. He offered her a piece of tortilla. Sophie just looked at it and made a little noise, almost like a grunt. Little Diego ran to the kitchen where his family was gathered. "I think there's something wrong with Sophie," little Diego said. "She won't even eat a tortilla." They all ran to Sophie's bed and looked helplessly at poor Sophie, who was barely moving. Mr. Dominguez felt her nose, and her nose is hot and dry, he said. "It's supposed to be cold and wet. That means she's sick." "Oh no," little Diego cried. "What's going to happen to Sophie?" "She'll be all right," Gabriella said, though by then tears were rolling down her face. "I think we should take her to the veterinarian," Mrs. Dominguez said. "Dr. Gomez will know what to do." Oh boy. I think she got a tummy ache. Oh. After Dr. Gomez examined her, he shook his head. He spoke to Mr. Dominguez in private, and after what seemed like forever, to Gabriella and little Diego, Mrs. Dominguez came out with Sophie in her arms. "Dr. Gomez gave her a shot," she said, "but she's just a puppy and she's very sick." Neither Gabriella nor little Diego liked the look on their mother's face. They tried to be brave. "Can we take her home?" little Diego asked. Mrs. Dominguez nodded. She placed Sophie between Gabriella and little Diego in the back seat of the car. They stroked Sophie all the way home, and they didn't fight about whose dog Sophie was. "Please get well," little Diego cried. "Please, Sophie." Oh. When they got home, Mr. Dominguez carried Sophie inside and placed her on her bed. "We'll just have to see if she gets better," he said. Little Diego sat down right in front of Sophie's bed and refused to move. "What if she dies?" he cried. "What if she dies?" She won't, Gabriella said, and she sat next to Diego and held him in her arms as she cried. You'll see, she whispered softly. She'll be fine. Inside, though, Gabriella wasn't so sure. That night, Gabriella and little Diego slept next to Sophie. All night, little Diego dreamed of Sophie and Gabriella and him playing in the park, and he was feeding Sophie his mom's fresh tortillas, and they were all happy. In the morning, when he woke, he sat up and felt Sophie's nose. Oh no, he said, her nose is still dry and warm. All day at school, Gabriella and little Diego felt sad and couldn't even listen to anything their teachers had to say. When they were walking home from school, little Diego began to cry. Don't cry, Gabriella whispered as she put her arm around her little brother. Sophie's going to be just fine. But inside, Gabriella was crying harder than little Diego. When they got home, Sophie was still lying on her pillow. She was breathing, but she wasn't moving. Neither of them ate dinner. They just sat and watched Sophie as she slept. And there they are, walking home from school. The next morning, little Diego woke. He'd slept on the floor again, right next to Sophie. He reached over and petted Sophie, then felt her nose. Oh no, he said to himself, it's cold. He yelled, it's wet. At the sound of his voice, Sophie sat up and barked. Gabriella jumped up, wide awake. She's well. I knew she'd get well. Mr. and Mrs. Dominguez ran into the room and saw Diego and Gabriella hugging their Sophie. They gave each other one of their looks. Sophie got well, Diego shouted. Our dog got well. Yay, Gabriella shouted. She looked at her brother and hugged him. Our dog got well. Oh, that's such a happy ending. I love it. Oh. Sophie jumped up and licked Diego right on the lips. Everyone laughed and went into the kitchen to eat breakfast. We've had 2 very long nights, Mrs. Dominguez said, as they sat down to eat a big breakfast at the table. Sophie jumped into little Diego's lap, stole the tortilla out of his hand, then jumped up and down and ran out of the kitchen. Hey, come back here, Sophie, little Diego yelled. He and Gabriella chased after Sophie. Mr. Dominguez looked at Mr. Dominguez looked at Mrs. Dominguez. I guess Sophie made a full recovery, he said. From now on, Mrs. Dominguez smiled, we'd better learn to hold on to our tortillas. And that was the end. What a nice story. I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope to see you again soon. I love you. Have a great day. Bye-bye now.